even get to cross.
What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from the Token Minorities, and I am back with my Week 2 battle from the GBA Season 3 D-League, this week against Danekii and his Roseradenborg. He got off to a really good start last week with a 5-0 win over Magic Activator and the Memphis Grizzlies, so already proving himself as a force in the league. But make sure to check him out. He will be linked in the description below. Super high quality content creator, has a very personal flair on his videos. He's a big Yu-Gi-Oh fan, clearly, and he makes a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh connections in his uploads, so make sure to go check him out. Would highly recommend him for sure on that front. Now, before we jump into this a little bit, make sure to check out the team builder if you haven't already. That will be linked in the description below. That's where I'll go over the nitty-gritty details of all of the sets that you'll see used here in this battle against Danekii. But again, before I jump into the, I guess a brief summary of what those Pokemon are in case you're too lazy to go look at the team builder, a brief shout out real quick to my front office for the help making this team once again. They are all linked in the description below, as well as links to all the guys who helped out with the graphics for this video and links to those who helped me gen my teams for week 1, which I forgot to give a shout out to Uzi for, so thanks Uzi, and for week 2, as well as who I anticipate will also help me at various times throughout the season. So that's it for the shout outs. Let's jump into this team preview a little bit here. So what my opponent decided to bring was the Garchomp, Darmanitan, Mega Absol, Licky, Magearna, and the Tangrowth, while I brought a Seismitoad, which is basically just a Stealth Rocker. It's Stealth Rocker, Rocky Helmet, so it's bulky enough to basically help me chip down a Darmanitan. Also has, I believe, Earthquake and Scald, and I believe Toxic in the last slot. Can't quite remember the last move off the top of my head, but it doesn't become relevant in the battle, so it's not that important anyways. But even so, then I have a Torrentee, which is Life Orb with Taunt, Heat Wave, Hurricane, and HP Ice, just to allow me to do a ton of damage to his entire team. I have a Rotom Heat, which is Spadef with some offensive investment and has an Assault Vest to basically be my guaranteed check to the Magearna. I have a Mew, which is Nasty Plot, very bulky, with a Colbur Berry, has Flamethrower, Size Shock, as well as Roost and Nasty Plot. I have the Mega Kangaskhan, which is just a fat tank Mega Kang with Wish and 3 attacks, including Earthquake to make sure I can hit the Magearna. And then I have a Scolipede, which has Toxic Spikes as well as 3 coverage moves to allow me to hit the combination of Aerodactyl, Magearna, and in general most of his team with Mega Horns. So the general game plan here that I do talk about in the team builder is to hazard stack him with the Toxic Spikes on my Scolipede and the Stealth Rock on my Seismitoad, and then to try to win the game in the end with my Scolipede potentially, but more likely winning the game with my Torrentee and just with my bulk in general, as the Toxic Spikes seriously wear down on his team. Just look at what he brought here to this matchup. Every single mon on this team, with the exception of being Magearna, is harmed badly by Toxic Spikes. So the Toxic Spikes are basically going to be able to wear him down, I feel, throughout this game, and my job is just to outlast him throughout that process. So that's the general idea with this. Now, before I jump into the battle, I do want to give a huge shout out to my opponent because he prepped super well in this game, and you'll see his prep unfold throughout the battle. This prep was really good. I was very impressed, and it made the game super close for sure. So let's go ahead and hop right on into this, and we'll see what my opponent decides to lead with. As for my own lead, though, my best lead here in this matchup is always the Seismitoad, because what that does is that ensures I can get up rocks early against this team. The only member of his team that can force out Seismitoad immediately is the Tangrowth. I will stay in versus literally any other member of his team, but my general game plan going into this game, it needs to make sure to be that I keep things healthy enough to take hits from the Darmanitan and the Mega Absol, so the Seismitoad is definitely going to be pretty important in achieving that. But rocks up early is certainly nice to be able to chip down the Darmanitan and the Mega Absol faster, so definitely going to lead off with my Seismitoad, and we will just see what happens here with this battle, as my opponent Danekii is going to issue the challenge, as you will see here in just a sec. Of course, repping the nice Jaden Yuki username here on his game. He goes by Jaden Yuki on Discord. No one really knows why, but that's what he does. So I'm going to lead off with the Seismitoad, as he's going to lead off with his Gaia, which is the Garchomp. So this is basically screaming Stealth Rock against my team. I brought 3 Pokemon that are weak to Stealth Rock, so I did not bring a removal on my Mew. He might be expecting me to not have removal, but even so, I do expect the Stealth Rock, so I'm going to go straight for a turn 1 Scald, just because I do feel like it is free, and if I can land the burn on Garchomp, that really helps me out against this thing later on in the game. Unfortunately for me, we do land the burn on turn 1, which is definitely very nice, as here I'm pretty much free to just set up my Stealth Rocks. He might Toxic me, but that's honestly not the worst thing in the world, because all I really need this Seismitoad to do is to take 1 Flare Blitz from Darmanitan, because the combination of Flare Blitz recoil plus Rocky Helmet recoil plus Stealth Rock damage plus the Toxic Spikes that I will have on the field later in the game is going to be enough to wear down the Darmanitan very quickly. So as long as the rocks are up, and now burning the Garchomp, as long as this thing is able to take 1 hit from Darmanitan, it has done its job in this game. So that's pretty nice. As here, he is going to pull a switch into his Tangrowth, as I'm actually going to double into my Kangaskhan, knowing that overall it is relatively free against the Garchomp if he decides to stay in. And I do have the Ice Beam on the Mega Kangaskhan that will allow me to hit the Garchomp, as well as this Tangrowth, which I expect to be Fizz Def with a Rocky Helmet. So this switch definitely works out in my favor, regardless of how it may look on his end, as I'm sure here on this switch he felt like he was in a good position, but no, we do have Ice Beam on this Mega Kangaskhan, and while it's not going to be an Oko versus the Tangrowth, as you'll see here from the damage output, it's still going to do about 50%, roughly 50%, maybe a little bit less than that, but it still does a lot of damage. That's more than 50% actually, as we do get the freeze here on the first hit of Ice Beam, but not the worst thing in the world, as he does immediately thaw out. And he just goes for a knockoff, I guess expecting me to switch out into something, which I thought was an interesting play, but it is fair enough. I guess that might have been him not really being so sure that I would have Ice Beam on this and thinking I might try to switch out and Berserk Kangaskhan, fearing a Focus Blast or a Sleep Powder. But here I'm going to double into my Scolipede, knowing that it's likely that if the Tangrowth has a fighting move, it will go for it here. The absolute worst case scenario for me would be him going for something like a Leech Seed on this turn, and that's not even that bad. There's no way he was going to go for an HP Fire or a Rock Slide, but he actually pulls the double into a Licky, which I also thought was a possible play on that turn. And either way, this covered whatever his possible play was, because this allows me to get my Toxic Spikes up right now, meaning that they are up for the entire game. They're up before the Mega Absol can get in, therefore that Mega Absol will get poisoned, and every single time the Mega Absol clicks an attack or Sword Dance or whatever, it is taking residual damage. So I really need to get that residual damage going early on Pokemon like the Darmanitan and the Mega Absol, and now we have all of those means of doing so on deck right away. So that's really good, off to a very good start in my opinion. As here, he goes for a return and it does literally nothing, so he definitely messed up his happiness on the Licky, which is pretty nice. It does indeed impact how the game will play out, as I'm going to be able to play much more aggressively around the, not more aggressively, but more passively actually around the Licky, just because I don't really have to fear its return as much. So I can make safe switches around it and whatnot, as opposed to maybe having to play more aggressively around it and weakening it every time I get the opportunity to do so, which would have been my plan of action if it actually had a full-powered return. But now that I know its only real way to attack me is with a passive move like Dragon Tail, it definitely can impact my my plays around it, basically. So here, I'm going to go into my Mega Kangaskhan on the Wish from the Licky, as he was Dragon Tailing me into my Seismitoad, and Seismitoad really can't do much to this thing, and I don't really know if it has Power Whip yet. That's definitely an option he could have if he was fearing the Seismitoad, maybe trying to get rid of it for my Darmas. Here I'm going to just go for an Ice Beam, maybe a little bit of an overprediction on my part, but I didn't really want him to be able to get his Garchomp back up to full health, and I kind of thought that might have been what he was going for there on that turn, but never really know, as I get that play incorrect. Maybe I should have just gone for a return or something, but the fact of the matter is, if I went for a return there and he did go into a Rocky Helmet user, that would mean that my Mega Kangaskhan is in range of a Mega Absol's knockoff later in the game, and that was not something I really wanted to allow to happen, as I really needed those switch-ins to Mega Absol to at least pivot around it and make it take that Toxic Spike damage later in the game. So that was the general thought process on this, as he Dragon Tails me out once again into my Seismitoad, as now I'm pretty confident he does not have the Power Whip, so I'm just going to go for the knockoff to get rid of his leftovers, as he sets up a Wish, as he should, Unfortunately for me, my Seismitoad is starting to get seriously worn down and probably almost in range of the Darmanitan, especially after one more round of Toxic, but I am just going to go for an Earthquake here one more time just in case he wants to stay in with his Licky Licky. He just goes into his Tangrowth, so maybe not the best long-term play in the world that I made here on this turn, but it's fine. All I really need the Seismitoad to do at this stage of the game is to take a hit from Darmanitan. It doesn't even have to live that hit. I just needed to take that hit so that Darm takes the Rocky Helmet damage in addition to the poison and stealth rock damage on entries. So, like I said before, that's the general plan with this Seismitoad. But here, I'm down to 81 HP. Definitely need to get out of here versus this Tangrowth. I can't really touch it, unfortunately. So what I'm going to be able to do is pull the switch straight on out into my Riz, which is the Torrentee. And Torrentee is a pretty safe switch into this thing overall. If he wants to go for a grass move, obviously I chew that. He ends up going for the Leech Seed here, which is fine. Thought the worst case scenario might have been him going for a knockoff, but I don't really need my Light Orb on this Torrentee, I felt, at this stage in the game, so was willing to take that risk as he just goes for the Leech Seed. So that's perfectly fine, as now I get a 120% free Hurricane if I can connect this. So let's see if we can connect this as he actually chooses to sack off his Tangrowth, and we do land the Hurricane. So down goes the Tangrowth. We get the first kill of the game. Very nice for sure. Now we're going to start to really put on that offensive pressure against him, as the hazards will be working against him as well. So here he goes into Inferno, which is the Darmanitan, confirming to me this is a Choice Scarf to Darmanitan, which I did expect. But here I'm just going to go ahead and switch straight into my Seismitoad, as its only job in this game, like I've already said many times, is to switch into this and dish off that Rocky Helmet damage in addition to the poison damage and the entry damage from the Stealth Rock. So we're going to switch this thing straight in, and despite this being a resistive Flare Blitz, we are still going to get knocked right out. I think this was a roll probably in my favor to survive, as I am nearly max defense on this, but even so, not the worst thing in the world to not to be taken out by that Flare Blitz, because I likely would have gone down to the Toxic Recoil anyways. So here, as you can see, just with one hit, this Darmanitan's already down to about 35% or 40% or so. So definitely game plan in terms of wearing that thing down worked out quite well. Now here I'm going to go into my Mew, just because that's the only thing on my team that can really just straight up take a Flare Blitz at this stage. And I'm just going to click Roost just in case he wants to stay in and Flare Blitz again, as he either switches out, takes 25% next time he comes in, or he just goes for the Kamikaze Flare Blitz here immediately and basically kills himself in the process as I roost up, knowing that even after this roost, regardless of if he is an Adamant Choice Scarfed Darmanitan, I will be outside of range of any hit from the Absol on the Revenge, just because of my Colbur Berry. So that sequence worked out pretty well here on my end for sure, as now he is going to go straight into his Absol. I assume he was expecting the Colbur Berry, but even so, he's probably not expecting me to pack coverage for this, because I really didn't feel like I could afford to, as this Mew was designed to also be able to 1v1 the Suicune if needed, so I wasn't really able to pack super effective coverage for the Absol whenever I needed coverage for the Magearna, and I wanted some sort of neutral coverage for the majority of his team. It just didn't really work out for me to have super effective coverage for this, though in hindsight that might have been really nice to have here, as that would have certainly made dealing with this Absol much easier overall. As here is going to go for a knockoff, and the damage here definitely confirms he is an Adamant Mega Absol, so he was bringing the power here in this game, and yeah, that did a metric million to my Mew despite the Colbur Berry, but we are going to get off the Flamethrower. Doesn't do too much damage to this Absol. That does reveal he is a very frail offensive variant, but even so, it does enough damage to where I should now be able to pivot around it, because I do feel like I have enough sacks in the back to be able to slowly chip him down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this Mega Kangaskhan as one of those pivots into the Mega Absol, and he's just going to go for the knockoff, and we're going to be able to survive that. So that's another round of poison damage. That's exactly what I needed. I needed this Mega Kang to take this round of poison damage, because with the amount of sacks I have left, that was the ideal way to approach the end game, I felt, was to make sure that the Mega Absol took one more round of poison damage before being able to kill something on my team. So that worked out pretty well, as he actually switches out and he's going to take the Stealth Rock damage instead of the poison damage next time, which works out just as well for me, as I'm going to double back into my Mew, just because I was willing to sack it off, honestly, and I felt like my Mega Kangaskhan was going to be a better breaker of the Magearna than the Mew would be late game if it becomes that sort of one-on-one scenario, if that makes sense. So I'm going to sack off the Mew here to the Garchomp. Didn't really expect to be able to get recovery back on the Mew by doubling out there. It was just something I did because I could, honestly, just basically a sack. But here I'm going to go into my Torrentee once again, which is my check to this Garchomp. I'm pretty confident he does not have a Yache Berry, and even if he does, he would be in range here because of my Life Orb. So So the Garchomp is going to go down to the HB Ice, and even if he wasn't in range for some reason, he would have been able to not kill me because he is burned. So that's pretty nice there for sure. As now he's going to go into his Clayman once again, which is the Licky Licky. Here I would have made a different play if the return would have done more damage to me, but even so, actually no, I might have still stayed in. Not really sure off the top of my head, but we're just going to go for a Hurricane here because he is poisoned. He is in range of 2 Hurricanes. There's no way he's going to be able to 1v1 me. And actually, now that I think about it, I don't know if he'd be able to kill me with a return from this range. The Dragon Tail does 37 HP. I'd have to run the calcs here, but I don't think the Dragon Tail would even kill me. And due to Regenerator, I would still be able to survive another switch into Stealth Rock. So maybe it wasn't too consequential in that particular case that the return wasn't doing as much damage to me. But the fact of the matter is now he phases me into my Scolipede, which is perfectly fine with me because this is just a free Earthquake. It's a free kill on my end. He decides to sack off the Licky Licky. I still have another hit in me from the Life Orb. And he's going to try to take this as his opportunity to set up with his Magearna, but this whole game plan is now coming to a conclusion as I still have that Rotom Heat in the back. He was never able to phase that in with his Dragon Tails, and that means that as long as I do not miss an Overheat, and as long as I don't choke here and actually click Earthquake, then we should be able to knock out the Magearna and basically clinch this game because the Mega Absol only has 1 hit left in it due to the residual damage from the Toxic Spike. So we're going to go for a Suicide Earthquake here to chip down the Magearna as he gets the Soul Heart boost. He's going to reveal the Trick Room here, which is exactly what I expected to see on this Magearna. I'm going to go straight into my Rotom Heat. Now, looking at the amount of health this thing had left, I thought there was a chance that if he was a max HP Magearna, he would actually still be in range of a Thunderbolt from this Rotom Heat, and if that was the case, I would not have to risk the accuracy of Overheat, but I wasn't quite convinced enough that it was in range, so I decided to risk it for the biscuit, go for the Overheat, and we do land it as he goes for the Hidden Power Rock and a +1 that is absolutely nothing to my Rotom, so I guess he did not pack the neutral coverage Z move for the Rotom Heat, but that's what my investment would have allowed me to do to survive a +1 Z Focus Blast from Magearna after Stealth Rock. So Hidden Power Rock was his coverage of choice, as I'm going to be able to knock that thing out. Here, I just have to choose my sack fodder, basically, because he gets another kill, but he decides to go for Sucker Punch, so I actually could have potentially saved this and gotten a 3-0, but, you know, it is what it is. He got the knockout there, which is good on him, so the Mega Absol will go down to the Toxic damage, or just the regular poison damage, and the Tyranitar Raptors will win this game 2-0 over Roseradenborg and Danekii, so very, very good game for sure. Super close, came down to the wire. And at the very beginning of this battle commentary, I mentioned that his prep was super good. Let me explain why, okay? He knew that my only way for him to deal with the Magearna was my Rotom Heat. My entire team, despite that, would only be able to chip him down. It would not be able to actually counter the Magearna. What he did with his prep was he had Dragon Tail on 2 Pokemon, one being the Garchomp, the other one being the Licky Licky, and he got Stealth Rocks up on turn 1. If he was able to Dragon Tail the Rotom Heat in, by luck of the draw, then my Rotom Heat would have potentially been in range of a +1 coverage move from that Magearna, but where that becomes an issue for him is that because his selection, his coverage move of choice for the Rotom Heat was the Hidden Power Rock instead of a Z Focus Blast, he actually would have had to been able to Dragon Tail my Rotom Heat in twice to put me in guaranteed range of that Hidden Power Rock. So, you know, it was almost perfect, I would say, in terms of playing around the exact team that I brought. His prep was almost perfect in being able to do that. If he was able to Dragon Tail in the Rotom Heat. But fortunately for us, he was never able to land that roll into the Rotom Heat, and it ends up being a 2-0 victory for the Tyranitar Raptors. So once again, excellent prep to Danekii. Very well played game as well. Super exciting, came down to the wire, and I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I did. So make sure to go check out his side of the battle. Of course, it'll be uploaded on his channel. I assume it will already be uploaded by the time you are hearing this. We're going to probably try to upload these at the same time, but yeah, make sure to go check that out, as well as his team builder if you're interested in that. And without further ado, we are done here, so I will see you guys next week as we take on the Don Fanatic, Jack, and his Norwich Skitty, and what's going to be hopefully a very good game as well. So thanks for watching, guys, and have a good one. Peace.